Following all of the lunacy of the last 2 days revolving around the leaked draft decision overturning Roe v. Wade, the White House pumped our supposed president full of God knows what and dragged him out of the basement on Wednesday. What transpired was a despicable, factless speech in which Joe Biden dishonestly spoke of the Supreme Court, Trump supporters, and of course the economy. Let's start with the clip that is currently going viral in which Beijing Biden claimed the, quote, MAGA crowd is the, quote, most extreme political organization that's existed in American history, unquote.
What happens if you have a state changes the law saying that children who are LGBTQ can't be in classrooms with other children? Is that legit under the way that the decision is written? What are the next things that are going to be attacked? Because this MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history, in recent American history.
Now, of course, the senile old criminal corrected himself, changing his statement to, quote, recent American history, but just barely. And either way, it's an insane comment to make. Biden should know that the far-left domestic terrorist groups of the 1960s existed because he was middle-aged by then. He should know that organizations currently exist that want to completely destroy America's system of governance in exchange for some mix of anarchy and communism, because he claims to still be sentient at this moment. I mean, come on, the idea that your MAGA grandma is the most extreme being to ever grace this great nation is so absurd as to be laughable. In a nutshell, this is what Trump supporters really want to do. They want to participate in free and fair elections. They want to stop illegal immigration and keep taxes low, bring jobs back, have safe communities, be free to express themselves on social media. How absolutely extreme, right? They aren't attacking anything or anyone. And before somebody pops off about January 6th, that was a frustrated group of people who have been severely and unjustly punished for walking into the Capitol building, many of whom were welcomed in by law enforcement. And if for once in this country we're going to actually play fair, and the leftists think that we're going to need to write off entire political movements due to incitement of supposed violence, then the Democrat Party is completely disqualified due to the BLM riots of 2020 across the country, riots which did far more damage than January 6th. Ironically, if anything, the MAGA movement largely represents policy moderation, while the left tries to drag the country further and further into insanity. It's not Trump supporters who are suggesting men can become women and that kids need to have access to gay pornography in middle school. And of course, since we're on censored social media these days, we won't even get into their thoughts on prepubescent genital mutilation. Sick stuff, folks. Sick stuff that would have gotten any teacher thrown in jail just a few decades ago. So spare us all the rants about being extreme. No movement in the country, past or present, is more extreme than the one Biden ostensibly leads. After all, we are dealing with a party that will scream up and down on social media all day and night that men can have periods. Oh, and they can get pregnant as well. Speaking of pregnancy, past that, Biden pointedly lied about what overturning Roe would actually mean. Here's a clip.
Number two, what was the second one? Look.
The second one was on abortion.
As I said when when this hit, as I was getting on the plane to go down to Alabama, this is about a lot more than abortion. I hadn't read the whole opinion at that time. But this reminds me of the debate with Robert Bork. Bork believed the only reason you had any inherent rights was because the government gave them to you. If you go back and look at the opening comments with Bork-Biden when I was questioning him as chairman, I said, I believe I have the rights that I have, not because the government gave them to me, which you believe, but because I'm just a child of God. I exist. I delegated by joining this union here to delegate some obligation, some rights I have to the governments for social good. So the idea that somehow there is an inherent right that there is no right of privacy, that there is no right. And remember the debate we had, you don't remember, but we had a debate about Griswold versus Connecticut. There had been a law saying a married couple could not purchase birth control in the privacy of their own bedroom and use it. Well, that got struck down. Griswold was thought to be a bad decision by Bork, and my guess is the guy's on the Supreme Court now. What happens if you have a state changes the law saying that children who are LGBTQ can't be in classrooms with other children?
Okay, so what state is proposing that LGBT children, an oxymoron in itself, should not be in the same classroom as other children? Further, Alito's draft decision, if it ends up being the final result, makes clear that the Supreme Court's reasons for overturning Roe are not transferable to things like gay marriage and interracial marriage, which rely on an equal protections argument. Yet, Democrats, and of course including Biden, are out there shouting lies, always in an attempt to stir up fear and possibly violence against the 5 justices poised to overturn Roe. And lastly, it is monstrous for Biden to use his supposed devout religious views to try to make an argument that there is an inherent right to abortion given by God. Does he sound anything like a devout Catholic to you? Now come on. It's one thing to hold a perverse viewpoint. That's bad enough. But to then twist God himself into being a supporter of abject evil, well, it's abject evil in itself. The last few days have hopefully been somewhat instructive for those on the right who think Democrats can be brought back to some level of sanity. It's not going to happen. They are going to keep pushing, and that's why it's more important than ever for Republicans to be willing to fight back. The truth of the matter is, if Roe is overturned and states get to decide their own abortion laws, that should be an awesome opportunity for Democrats to go out and express their views and earn their right the Democratic way. After all, this is a democracy, right? Well, no, not exactly. You see, they are scared to death of the true will of the American people. That's the problem they have now, and they've pretty much always had. But hey, there's always California, right? At the current rate of Democrat lunacy, they'll probably legalize the killing of children all the way up to the age of 18 soon. So there's that.
Now, as a factual matter, not that facts seem to matter too much, but if you cared about them, you couldn't really argue with that claim, because the Constitution does not, in fact, prohibit American voters from banning abortion. Or for that matter, does not prohibit American voters from legalizing abortion, because the U.S. Constitution doesn't mention abortion or allude to it in any way. And anyone who claims that it does, as the Roe decision claims, is lying to you. Read the document for yourself. It's online. So why exactly is everybody so mad at Samuel Alito? It's strange, because what Alito is proposing here is the very definition of democracy. We've got a bitter disagreement, in this case over abortion. Both sides have a case to make. They can take that case to the public. In the end, the public gets to decide who's right by voting on it. That's called self-government. Since when is that scary? Well, since one side decided that self-government is too risky and had to be eliminated. Now, they couldn't say this out loud, of course, because, as we told you, the alternative to democracy is tyranny, and no one can be for tyranny. So instead, they played yet another word game, because that's always how it starts. They inverted the definition of the word democracy to mean exactly the opposite of what democracy has meant for thousands of years, since Athens. In Washington, at this point, the word democracy now means we're in charge of everything. Shut up. That's almost exactly how they're defining democracy. This morning's Washington Post carried this headline, which, as usual, doesn't seem real, yet is real. Quote, "In draft abortion ruling, Democrats see a court at odds with democracy." Because letting people vote on things is now, quote, at odds with democracy. It's hard to believe anybody could say this with a straight face, but Joe Biden can say anything with a straight face. Just today, Biden declared that people who insist on voting for things are not only wrong, they're the single greatest threat facing the United States. People who still believe in yesterday's understanding of democracy, where they have power, are more dangerous, Joe Biden said, than Al-Qaeda, the Weather Underground, even the Nazi Party. These people are terrorists. And you know what we do to terrorists? Watch.
This is about a lot more than abortion. What happens if you have a state changes the law saying that children who are LGBTQ can't be in classrooms with other children? Is that legit under the way the decision is written? What are the next things that are going to be attacked? Because this MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history.
So everything about that is a lie. It's hard to believe that's the President of the United States. Of course, it's not a decision, it's an opinion. And that opinion says explicitly this reasoning applies only to Roe versus Wade and abortion. And it should not be construed as applying to anything else. It says that flat out. If you read it, you would know that. He didn't, clearly. So what he said is a lie, but here's the line that you should never forget, and we're quoting. This MAGA crowd, which is to say the tens of millions of people who voted for Donald Trump, is really, we're quoting, the most extreme political organization that has existed in history. In history, all human history, which is to say worse than Hitler, worse than Stalin, worse than Mao. It's hard to believe he's talking about tens of millions of American citizens, but he is. And you should know that no American president ever has talked about his own people like this, or even considered talking about his own people like this. It is shocking that any president would, and he just did. And it's easy to see where it goes from here. What do you do to terrorists? Well, you know what you do. You kill them. It doesn't matter if they're American citizens. Barack Obama taught us that. You just drone them. They're terrorists. Terrorists must die. So you should pay close attention to what any president says from the podium, particularly when it's Joe Biden, and everything he says he reads because he has no choice. What are we seeing? We're seeing a coordinated effort by the Joe Biden administration to recharacterize political dissent as terrorism. Disagree with us, you're Al-Qaeda, you're Hitler. So to get people to accept this, they're not using rational arguments, because there is no rational argument for this. It is the definition of tyranny, erasing democracy, replacing it with autocracy and force. So instead of convincing people, they're using what they always use, which is fear and hate. They're whipping people into a frenzy.
Most of this came by way of redstate.com. If you liked it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment down below. There's a PayPal link in the description box, so please put $1 in the bucket on the way out the door. I'd like to thank everyone for all your donations. They're much needed and much appreciated. Now, with all that being said, we'll see you next time.
Come on, move. Move. Easy, easy.